The year 2025 has now passed its halfway point. Today marks the beginning of a new half. I bless you in the name of the Lord to spend this day looking back on the past half, looking forward to the next half, filling in what was lacking in our journey of faith, and resolving to re-establish those things that need to be started anew. In today's passage, the first generation of faith comes to a close, and the next generation continues God's work. Abraham ends his life at the age of 175. The story of Abraham, which began in chapter 12, concludes in our passage today in chapter 25, and the story moves on to his son Isaac. Amazingly, between the stories of Sarah's death and Abraham's death, the Bible unfolds stories of marriage and new birth. Life and death are shown to be intertwined. I think this reflects what life is like. Between the sorrowful and mournful stories of death, stories of birth and marriage, stories full of hope are inserted. Our lives, too, are not filled only with sorrow, nor are they filled only with joy. Just when we feel overwhelmed by difficult and painful times and wonder, when will this ever end? God brings those difficult times to a close, and hope and promise begin to bloom. I believe our lives are also like this. The story of hope, of marriage and birth, recorded between death and death, is the story that unfolds in today's passage and is also the story we write together with God in our own lives. First, the story of marriage is that of Isaac's, which we looked at until yesterday, recorded between death and death. After Sarah died and before Abraham passed away, Isaac met Rebekah and formed a new family. And in today's passage, another marriage story appears. It is the story of Abraham taking another wife. Verse 1 records that Abraham took another wife named Keturah. Keturah bore him several sons. This is the story of birth. It is a story of life, of birth, situated between death and death. Abraham, who had only 2 sons during his first 100 years, now has many sons in a short time through his new wife. At this time, Abraham did something very well, befitting the father of faith. It was that while he was still alive, before he died, he cleanly settled all matters related to inheritance. Let's read verses 5 and 6 together. Genesis 25, 5, 6. Abraham left everything he owned to Isaac, but while he was still living, he gave gifts to the sons of his concubines and sent them away from his son Isaac to the land of the east. Abraham first took care of Isaac. The Bible says he left everything he owned to him. Just as God had taught him that it had to be the son born through Sarah, Abraham thought of Isaac specially. However, he did not treat his other sons neglectfully. If he had only taken care of Isaac and neglected the others, problems could have arisen after his death. We see such problems frequently even today. Having an inheritance is a blessing. Being able to divide property is a blessing. But we see so many stories in the world where human greed turns that blessing into a curse. Abraham handled the situation very wisely. He gave Isaac special treatment as was his due, but he also gave property to his other sons to prevent any future trouble. And he separated those sons from Isaac. Verse 6 records that while he was still living he sent them away from his son Isaac, meaning the sons born of his other wife were made to leave Isaac. He finished what needed to be finished and settled what needed to be settled during his lifetime. Otherwise, Isaac would have had to deal with this after Abraham's death, and given Isaac's character, this would not have been an easy task. The story in the next chapter shows that Isaac was not a person who enjoyed fights or disputes. When people from other tribes came and seized the well he had dug, Isaac would simply give it up. He would give it up and move to another place to dig another well. If they came and took that well too, he would not fight but would go to another place. I believe this was because he had the faith that, my life does not depend on this well. God will always provide what I need. But if a dispute had arisen between Isaac, with his character and the sons of Abraham's other wife, Isaac probably would have been hit quite hard. If such a problem occurred, it would not have been just Isaac's personal problem. The entire house of Abraham, the very lineage of faith itself, would have been in danger of being shaken. That situation is described in verse 11. Let's read verse 11 together. Genesis 25, 11. After Abraham's death, God blessed his son Isaac, who then lived near Beer-lahai-roi. After Abraham died, God blessed his son Isaac. Today's passage records the names of many people. They are all sons or descendants of Abraham. But among these many people, only one person is connected to the blessing. That one person is Isaac. Only Isaac is connected to the blessing of God, the blessing his father Abraham had received. Only Isaac is the son with the legitimate line of Abraham. And today's passage doesn't only record the names of the sons and descendants born through Abraham's other wife, Keturah. From verses 12 to 18, it also records the descendants of Ishmael, Isaac's half-brother, whom Abraham had by Hagar the servant. They also prospered greatly. They acquired much land and had many leaders, but there is something they lack. That is the blessing. The blessing is only with Isaac. Only Isaac inherited the blessing of God that began with Abraham. This blessing is a completely different concept from the presence of wealth, the ownership of land, or the numerical prosperity of a nation. The blessing is a direct relationship with God. The blessing is becoming a child of God. That is why this blessing comes with the promise, I will bless those who bless you, and whoever curses you, I will curse. The reality of the blessing passed down in this family is the promise that God will be with them, and that blessing and curse will come not from God's perspective, but from your perspective, Abraham, and from your perspective, Isaac. This is the very blessing that Esau later treated lightly. The reason he lost his birthright and blessing, the reason the blessing that could have been his flowed to his younger brother Jacob, was because he treated this blessing, the succession of the blessing, with contempt. But everyone, how does this blessing manifest itself today? Is this blessing still being inherited and passed down through the biological descendants of Abraham? No, it is not. This blessing is now inherited by all believers through Jesus Christ. Romans 1:16-17 introduces this blessing like this, Romans 1:16-17. For I am not ashamed of the gospel, because it is the power of God that brings salvation to everyone who believes, first to the Jew, then to the Gentile. For in the gospel, the righteousness of God is revealed, a righteousness that is by faith from first to last, just as it is written, the righteous will live by faith. Here, a blessing that transcends both Jew and Gentile, a blessing enjoyed, obtained, received, and passed down only through faith is introduced. This gospel is the power of God for the salvation of everyone who believes. The lineage of Abraham, the lineage through which the blessing was inherited, has now become the lineage of faith, the genealogy of faith through Jesus Christ. And that genealogy of faith has been opened to all who believe in Jesus Christ, regardless of bloodline, whether Jew or Gentile. Dear brothers and sisters, through faith, we have become people who possess the legitimacy of the blessing. We have all become Isaac. Through faith, we have all become Isaac. God opened this special tradition of blessing, which came down through one specially chosen ancestor, to all humanity through Jesus Christ. He made it so that anyone can enter into that blessing through faith. We have all inherited that blessing in faith like Isaac, and we have also received the responsibility to pass on that blessing, like Abraham. The blessing should not remain in one place. That tradition, that blessing, must not be broken with us. It must be passed on to our next generation, and to our neighbors. The blessing must be passed down from those in Abraham's position to those like Isaac, and those in Isaac's position must be able to inherit the blessing of Abraham received from our parents' generation. To this end, retreats and Bible schools are prepared for our children, our next generation, our youth during the summer. We have a responsibility to pray for our next generation. We must pray for our next generation, our youth, and our preschool, elementary, and teenage generations. And we must pray that all our children, soaked in God's grace, will gain the strength to fight against the world, to overcome the worldly values and the turbid, competitive atmosphere of the world. That wrong atmosphere where people must kill and step on each other to get ahead, and transform it into an atmosphere of love. The words, I will bless those who bless you, and whoever curses you I will curse, mean that our blessing is not only for ourselves but is directed toward others through us. That is, it means we have received the blessing for the sake of others. It means that through us, someone can be blessed or conversely cursed. This is the responsibility of one who has the blessing. Just as Abraham passed the blessing down well to Isaac, we have the responsibility to pass on the gospel we have received to someone else. I bless you in the name of the Lord, to live your lives sharing the gospel with your families, your neighbors, or the colleagues you meet today. May all our beloved saints become channels and instruments for the flow of God's blessing of life, so that God, who has blessed us with life, may bless someone else with life through us, as we live these lives where birth and marriage exist between deaths.